Hello and welcome to Paranormal or What podcast with me, your host, Michaela Ford. How are you all, paranormal peeps? We've got a real treat for you tonight. We have a gentleman who has done many, many things to do with the paranormal. So I'm very excited to speak to him tonight, and that is Ben Walgate. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
That's all right. So the first question I always ask everybody is, how did you get into the paranormal?
Yeah. So for me, it started at a very young age. I grew up in a house that was very active with poltergeist activity. And I stayed in that house basically all my life up until about the age of 18 when I left to join the army. But in that time, me, my mum, dad, every member of the family had experienced something that was unexplainable and absolutely terrifying. Even the family dog was terrorized at times with the activity that was taking place in the house. So, as a young kid, listening to the adults talk about their experiences, not quite knowing what to make of it, or if, or even what it was, it always piqued my interest. Then when I got older, I had my own experiences and I came to understand what poltergeist meant. I just went down that rabbit hole like I'm sure that many others do, reading books, watching documentaries. And yeah, that's how it started for me, just living in a house that was super active.
And whereabouts was that? Where was your house?
So my house where I grew up was in York. Obviously York is known to be a really, really haunted city anyway.
Yeah.
But the house itself was just on a council estate. It was like any other council estate that you'd find here in the UK.
Oh,
Um,
right.
and if you was to just pull up outside the house and I showed you which one it was, there's nothing to suggest that it was as terrifying as it was, but I assure you, life-changing things happened in that house.
Oh my goodness. So was it like a one of those 1960s semi-detached, or was it
Yeah, that's
terraced?
right.
Or...
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly that. And where it was as well. So the estate is actually called Chapel Fields, and when we look back through the history of the area, if you go further enough back, you'll find that there actually was a chapel at one point, stood, and surrounded by fields. That's why it's called Chapel Fields. And obviously, in the fields of the chapel would have been the burial sites of many different people. So it could be to do with the land. It might be the house as well. It could be both.
Yeah. Do you know whether any of your neighbours or people nearby had any sort of activity?
Um, no, we spoke to the next door neighbours. They were an elderly couple, and the reason we spoke to them was because they knew the previous owner that had died in the house.
Yeah.
So we was just trying to gauge what that person was like, if they, were malevolent or had any ill intent as a human while they were here alive on Earth. But it seems that it was quite the opposite. She was a sweet old lady, visited often quite frequently by her son. What we did find out though is that a few people had died in the house.
Yeah.
So the elderly woman had died. She fell down the stairs, and she wasn't found for a few days after. And there was also a priest that died in the front living room as well, choked to death in the front room.
Oh, wow.
But sightings of a little child, of a girl, and one other figure that we couldn't really put any detail to was in the house as well. So there's literally like four different spirits that were seen and experienced in that house.
Yeah, I think some houses just seem to attract spirits, don't they? Because
Yeah,
a lot of the most haunted houses in Britain, like
yeah,
East Drive, places like that, they're just normal houses with no reason, it would seem, to have lots of spirits there. It's
yeah.
really fascinating. So can you tell me what sort of things used to happen?
Yeah, I'll just mention really quickly as well, because it's worth noting this. The movies always show you poltergeist activity on films, and it has this tiered level of intensity.
Yeah.
It usually starts off with people seeing some kind of a shadow in the corner of the eye, an object will move or go missing. Then there's bangs and noises, and eventually it starts speaking and becoming more physical. And that's exactly what we experienced in the house.
Oh, really?
It,
Wow.
exactly that pattern of events happened in exactly that way. Also, as well, something worth noting is that at the time, my sister and my older brother, who were both older than me, sorry, would have been going through that pubescent stage of their life.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And that is something as well that really rings true with poltergeist activity. So yeah, we had my sister, brother going through that pubescent stage of their life. We had friends over all the time, which is my mum and dad had a rocky relationship. All this energy in the house just basically is what I think was
Set it
a,
off. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so did things, was it like you had knocking and things, and did things move? What sort of
All,
things were
all,
going
all the
on?
t all the time. That was almost a weekly occurrence. Things went missing became almost the norm. You'd find, and it was always done in a way that you couldn't question, oh, was that my imagination? Am I going crazy? You couldn't be in that situation because it played games. Like it would take an object that you knew you just literally that second place down.
Yeah.
It would then have you going look around the house, looking in every cupboard, every drawer, every room, just to find it in a room that you checked 10 times before, and it'd be stood up in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
It was playing games like that at times. Um, One of my experiences, the first experience that I ever had was probably the most terrifying for me personally. I mean, my dad's had terrifying experiences, so did my mum and my brother, but for me, I was about 5 or 6 years old, maybe a bit younger than that. And I was in the front living room. My mum was going up to get a bath, and my brother and sister were out at school. And it was just around about kicking out time at school. So she knew that they'd be on the way home. And
Yeah.
she said to me, Ben, I'll be getting in the bath and I'm going to be locking the bathroom door because your brother and sister will come running in. Do you want to watch the TV or do you want to come upstairs and play in your bedroom while I'm in the bath? So I said, "Oh well, I'll watch TV downstairs." As any 5, 6 year old child, after about 10 minutes, I got bored, decided to jump off the sofa and turn the TV off. The idea was that I was going to go upstairs and actually do play with my toys. When I turned the TV off, it was one of those old style TVs. You probably remember they used to fizzle out with the black and white static on the screen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I've turned the TV off, I'm kneeling in front of it, and I see all this black and white static come up on the screen, which is normal. And then it kind of fizzled out, and when it did, there was still something on the screen shimmering. And the positioning of this was roughly behind my left shoulder, stood at the living room door. So the cogs are going in my head. I'm a young child, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Turned the TV back on, back off, and there it is again, still stood over my left shoulder at the living room door. So I don't know why I did this, but I never looked directly at whatever this thing was over to my left.
Yeah.
I just stood up and I edged back towards the seat where I'd just been sat, and I constantly fixated on this thing through the reflection of the TV. As I'm doing that, I noticed that it started to shimmer more violently, and this thing started to grow in size. Now, to me, that meant that either it was growing bigger in space and time within the room, or more terrifyingly, it was getting closer to me.
Yeah.
I soon realized that it was actually getting closer to me because when it got to a certain size, I quickly snapped my head to have a look at this thing directly, and it glided across the floor with such speed and into my face that I scrambled up the back of the sofa. I ripped all the cushions off. I was trying to scream, nothing would come out, and I ran for the living room door as fast as I could. Obviously, brain on the bathroom door. Explained to my mum that what had just happened as best I could, and I could tell straight away from her expression, that she was terrified. And by this time, I think that enough had happened already to other people that she realized this was quite serious. This
Mm.
wasn't just some young child with an over imaginative brain. This was something
Yeah.
that really just happened.
Wow. Gosh, that's incredible. Did you get any sense of shape, like outline, or was it just
I
a
did. If you could get a cookie cutter shape of a human being, the head, the shoulders, it came down. I didn't see any feet. But the best way I can describe what I saw stood at that door on that day was if you look down the road on a hot day and
Mm.
you see the shimmering of the heat wave.
Yeah.
Yeah, now flip that vertically and give it the shape of a human. That's exactly what I saw. It was a shimmering heat wave, almost glowing bright white, stood at the door in the shape of a human.
Wow, that's incredible. Have you, it just really reminds me of something, and there's
All
something that I
right.
noticed on your YouTube channel as well. Have you ever listened to a podcast, an American podcast called Monsters Among Us?
I think I have, yeah. I think I've heard of that before on
It's
YouTube.
so cool. And
Yeah,
the guy on there, Derek, coined the phrase "glimmer man," and I know you've heard of it because you
yeah,
mentioned it on your YouTube,
yeah.
and that's what it sounds like to me.
Sorry. I'll- Um, Yeah, no, I don't think it does sound like that, and it depends if they come in different appearances. Like,
Forms. Yeah.
yeah, like for me, the Glimmer Man, when you talk about that, is almost the Predator type character. You know, when he's
Yeah.
translucent. That's not what I saw. Literally, what I saw, I couldn't see through it. I couldn't see the other side. It was just the glowing shimmer of what looked like a heat wave.
Yeah. That's really, really fascinating. So, did your parents ever sort of think, right, we've had enough of this and we want to move out, or did they just sort of put up with it?
Yeah, a lot of people ask that question. And it and the thing is, I understand. Like after hearing everything that I speak about with regards to that house, you would assume that we'd just all get our stuff in bags and we'd be out as quick as possible. But I think back at that time, it wasn't as easy as that. You
Yeah.
know, council houses at that time was everybody was after them. There were a young couple, three young children, and we'd literally, I mean, we'd not lived there that long, so I don't think that they had any intention of leaving. But my mum, after a while, after a few years, did get a priest in and bless the house with holy water to see if that would help, and it did for about 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
then after that, everything just spiked again and got out of hand. But this also never happened consistently for like days at a time, weeks at a time. You would
Yeah.
have 6 weeks where nothing happened. And then all of a sudden you'd have 2 months where the whole house was turned upside down. And I think it's during those down periods that my mum and dad decided actually, it's getting better or we'll stay.
Yeah, I think you do, don't you? You go up and down because you think, oh, it's fine, it's all right now. And then when it
Yeah.
starts happening, you go, well, I can put up with it at the moment. And
Yeah,
then
you
you
do.
kind of get to a crisis point, and then it seems to know, and then
Yeah,
it kind of goes back down again. And
that's
just
right.
as you've had enough, it's like, oh, no, maybe it's all right again now. And then it just carries on going.
Yeah, and some of the phenomena as well, like we spoke about the items going missing, knocks, seeing things like shapes and shadows in the corner of your eye, things like that. You almost become accustomed to it. And
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy because there'll be people listening thinking I could never, get used to that living in my house. But when it's you and the rest of your family, you kind of do. Like you kind of expect, or it's not as much of a shock a few years down the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm with you there. After living in several houses where very strange things happened, you do kind of put up with it.
Yeah,
And it's only when you look back and you go, my goodness, that was crazy.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I do that. I do that a lot. And you know something else I do as well is like when I reflect now, because things were so crazy, you almost second guess whether like, wow, did I go through that? Did that really happen? And it's only when
Yeah.
you speak to your other family members and stuff that confirm exactly what you're thinking. You're like, wow, like that really did take place.
Yeah, I know. It is, you question yourself. I mean, sometimes
Yeah,
even when things happen now, I'll go, did that really happen? Or have I just imagined that? Especially
yeah,
out on investigations and stuff like that, because you
yeah,
think, nah, it's probably just me.
yeah.
So was there any sort of gap then from after living in that house to then sort of actively seeking out, searching to sort of find the answers to the paranormal, or did it just kind of smoothly
I
move along?
never, yeah, I never ever intended to take this path, going out there into these hotspot areas and searching for these things. And it certainly didn't come from my experiences in that house, although that did probably open my mind to talking about the things I talk about.
Yeah,
My turning point was later on, a bit later on in life. I was about at this time now, I was about 9 or 10 years old, 8, 9 or 10, somewhere around that age bracket. And this experience I had at this time was more extraterrestrial, I would say. And that's really what caught my attention. I don't know whether it was because I was older and I was able to make more sense or, know it was a bit, I don't know. But that's for me is what spurred my interest and got me out there.
yeah, because this is a story that actually ended up in lots of newspapers and reporters were sort of really interested in it. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so yeah, the story went viral. It went all around the world, which was crazy to me. Ended up in China, India, put everywhere. Um, so basically, when I was around that age, 8, 9, 10 years old, I was in the Cub Scouts, and we used to go to a place called Snowball Plantation, which was a very popular camping place, like a wooded destination for the Cub Scouts, brownies, things like that to go.
Yeah.
And we was there one weekend. I think it was summertime. I remember it was really, really hot, and everything was perfect. It was a great time for me to get away, practice bushcraft, do all that kind of stuff. It was on the way home. We was on a minibus, and the Cub Scout leader stood in the middle of the bus and said, "We're going to pull over if anyone wants to jump off for a quick toilet break." This was 97, so times were different then. Kids would just jump
Yeah.
off and have a pee at the side of the road. So me and my friend who was sat at the back of the bus, we jumped off and we stood at the side of the road. I was quite a shy kid, didn't want to stand shoulder to shoulder with my friend taking a pee. So in front of us was an embankment that came above waist height. So I decided to push up this embankment a little bit. I could still see everything behind me, but now I could also see in front of me, which opened out into this wooded area that you couldn't see through from the road. So I'm stood there at the top of this embankment. I'm looking through the trees and I see this little outhouse that was clearly disused. It had ivy growing all over it, bricks missing. And it was quite odd. Like there was no other part of this building. So it was just like a brick, in my opinion, it was like a brick outhouse on its own in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of these woods. So I'm looking around to try and find the other part of the building. And as I'm doing that, I noticed something move. And I looked over to I can't remember if it was my left or my right, but I looked over to where this thing was, and I saw this green, tall, slender looking creature, green from head to toe, olive green. It had black eyes and it hunched over as it was walking through the woods. It walked with a stoop. Now, I don't know if that was its gait and the way it walked, or if it was trying to keep a low profile as it moved through the woods. But it clearly saw me. It looked across at me. I looked at this thing and it just carried on walking, like so blasé, as if it just knew that I wasn't going to run off and I wasn't going to go screaming back down the embankment. It was just such a weird experience. And for me, from my perspective, I thought it was a prank. I instantly thought this was a joke. So I thought in my young mind, I'm gonna get one over you guys. I'm gonna get back on the bus and I'm gonna pretend that I never saw it. So then all your hard work, all your efforts have gone to waste because I didn't see what you've done, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I jumped back on the bus after seeing this weird green humanoid, bipedal, walking on 2 feet. Jumped back on the bus and I waited for someone to say, "Did you see it?" Or, "Ah, we got you. We've tricked you. Was you scared?" And I waited, and nobody said anything. So yeah, that was just so weird. And the weird part about that is that not only did nobody say anything, I completely forgot about that experience until I was about late 20s, early 30s, and I was at work one day, and everything just hit me again. That whole memory of being there, seeing this creature seeing me, it just all came back like it had happened yesterday. And I couldn't
Mm.
understand why I'd never thought about it in between that time. I couldn't understand why I'd never spoke about it or tried to research it because it was such an impact, like an impactful thing to have experienced.
Yeah.
And yeah, it never came back to me till late 20s, early 30s.
Wow. So were you said the eyes were black? Were they the
Yeah.
kind of almond shape or were they
They were
different?
like human eyes, a bit larger than human eyes, really black. And like I've said, the creature that I saw it had a very small head, but the body was almost out of proportion to the size of the head. It had very long arms that came past the knee,
Yeah.
and it walked with this hunched over gait as it went through the trees. It was really, really weird. But again, never seemed phased at any point when it looked at me.
Yeah.
Never seemed bothered. It was just so weird. And I think it was a chance encounter. Like a lot of people have asked, do you think it knew you would be pulling up there and it was waiting for you? For me, I don't think that's what happened. I think that it was just literally a random stop. This thing probably has done this many of times before, but never had a school bus, a minibus full of kids pull up at the side of the road and one of which runs up the embankment. So maybe I just caught it out. I don't know.
Yeah. And what was it? What was it that made you think it was alien rather than, like the legend of the Green Man, the kind of
Yeah,
tree
yeah.
creatures type things? What made you feel that?
Well, have you ever seen the movie Signs with Mel Gibson?
Yes.
there's a scene in Signs, and if any of your listeners have seen it as well, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a scene in that movie where they're watching some birthday footage on the TV, and this creature steps across the alleyway. This is going to sound crazy, but whoever made that film has some inside information as to what is going on, really, because that is almost identical to what I saw. Um, it's just for me, it could be anything really. I don't guess I'll ever know what it was, but it felt extraterrestrial with the green skin, small head, big black oval eyes, and yeah, it was very alien in every sense of the word.
Yeah. And what year was Signs out? Did that come out after that?
Signs came out years and years later. Yeah, so
Later. Yeah, yeah.
my sighting was in '97. The funny thing is as well, like obviously once I've gone back and I've started to research what I saw, I typed in the year 1997, and UFO sightings all around the world peaked during 1997. There was a lot of people and a lot of big cases regarding the UFO phenomena around that time. So, and even people with similar experiences as to what I had. So, yeah,
Yeah.
makes you think.
It really does. I've often wondered before whether people who make films have I've tried not to get myself dragged into kind of conspiracy theories and stuff, but you do sort of think, hang on, some of these films that I've watched are rather uncanny.
Yeah,
Have they got some sort of information that we don't know? It does make you
absolutely.
wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Because, like I said, once I saw that film, and people have asked me, can you describe what it looked like? I just point them to that film because it's almost identical to the creature I
Yeah.
saw.
Well, it's even like the idea of predator and that sort of cloaking and kind of weird
Yeah,
blurred pixelation. So
yeah,
many people have seen things that fit that sort of thing. Um,
yeah.
that
I was
that
I was talking about this
it's a bit
recently.
weird.
Yeah, I was talking about this recently. If you look at some of the movies like Star Trek back in the day when that first came out, and you had the crew of the ship walking up to these automatic doors that would just open as they approached, people were mind blown by that. That
Yeah,
technology didn't exist, and now we have that on every local Tesco store, every local Asda, and even the device that they would pull out of their pocket to communicate with was never even seen or heard of. Like, but now it's just what we know as a mobile phone. So
yeah,
everything we see in movies at some point comes to be, doesn't it? And
it does.
I think that the creatures, it would be no different. The creatures that they're putting in these movies, they've obviously seen or experienced or know of through some time and period.
Although skeptics would like to say that it's us creating it because we've seen it on television or film, which I
Yeah,
think is just it's just ridiculous. I mean, you can have dreams about crazy things, but
yeah,
as a person who's in my 20s in the 90s and went to many, many raves and did lots of naughty things, even in my most hallucinatory state, I wasn't seeing things like that,
no.
So I don't
I,
believe that people are making them up in their minds and then projecting them and seeing them because they've seen
well,
them on the telly.
yeah, and the way I think about this is I'm an artist, and I can create imaginary characters. But those imaginary characters are still based on things that I've seen, whether it's the nose, the shape, the head, the eyes, whatever it may be. It's almost impossible to just generate something that hasn't been seen somewhere else. So even as an artist, the things that I'm creating randomly that I think of from the top of my head, if you really look out there, like on Pinterest, Instagram, or whatever, you'll find another artist, or it might be something that you've seen in your everyday life where it shows up in that art. So it's
Yeah.
not really 100% made up, make believe, just come from nowhere. And yeah, I think it's very similar in the movies as well.
Yeah, it's all based on something, isn't it?
Yeah,
But I'm fascinated with the idea that it was green. I just
yeah.
think that's really, really interesting. And have you seen, I'm sure that you've not seen anything exactly the same since, but have you seen other kind of UFO related things since?
I've never seen anything like that before or since, like the extraterrestrial that I saw. I have had one UFO encounter, which happened maybe about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, so do you want me to dive into that as well?
Yeah,
And
yeah, definitely.
yeah, so me and my brother had gone up to a place called Flamborough Head. It's
Oh
just on
yeah, I
the
know it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's quite a popular hotspot for strange lights, things like that. A lot of stories coming from that area. So we went up there for that reason. Um, And we were sat on the coast. We was looking out. Started to get really really cold, so we decided to pack up. Nobody there at this time of night. Everyone's cleared off because, as you know, the North Sea at night gets freezing. Everyone's just
Yeah.
disappeared. We're the only ones mad enough to be there. As we're walking back up the main track past the lighthouse, my brother sees four amber-shaped lights just appear in the sky. I never saw it at this time, but my brother's like, "Wow, did you see that?" So we're both looking up. I'm saying that I never saw it. What was it? Then all of a sudden they flash on again, and they flash off, and then in the same direction of travel, they flash on and flash off. So naturally, I'm thinking that's a weird looking plane, but because it's going in the same direction of travel, maybe it is. Next thing, it's gone back on itself where it originally started from and flashed again. And it kept doing this back and forth motion across the sky. And I remember my initial thought was, this pilot doesn't have a clue. Like, what is he doing? Like, what does he know where he's going? And then the weirdest thing, we heard two fighter jets scream above our heads. And this thing just went straight out to sea about 10, 20 mile within the blink of an eye. It was gone over the horizon, right out to sea. And these two fighter planes came screeching over our heads in the same direction, chasing this thing out to sea. There was one cloud, one wispy little cloud in the sky that night. It was just getting dusk, and not, some of the stars were already out. We're stood there and we're looking out to sea, completely in amazement at what's just happened. We're both really not saying much. Just, I think we were trying to process what the hell we've just seen. Um, and I kid you not, we looked up, and out of this wispy little cloud, those four amber lights appeared above our head, like very,
Wow.
very, yeah. It was the weirdest thing. We never saw it come back. We never heard no noise. It just appeared. The last time we saw it, it disappeared out near the horizon of the North Sea. Then moments later, it's appearing eerily out of this cloud, the one and only cloud in the sky. It blinked two more times, and then we never saw it ever again.
Wow. So it's like it was hiding behind the cloud.
Exactly that. And do you know, that experience leaves so many questions because I think when we talk about extraterrestrials, when we talk about UFOs, we seem to imagine that they're so far advanced than us. And I think they are. I think they are. But I think there's also human elements to these people, these beings, because the fact that it was going left and right in the sky was to me like it was almost trying to make a decision on where to go. It knew these planes were inbound. It didn't know where to go. It
Mm.
decided to shoot out to sea and then somehow use the cloud for cover. I don't know how it got back. I can't answer that bit, but yeah, very. I don't know. It's just it's unusual. It's very very weird.
Isn't it? I mean, do you think that there are creatures that come from? I mean, I suppose there's loads of schools of thought, but let's just think about three. Are they creatures from far off planets that have figured out how to get here super fast? Are they creatures that have learned how to go through different dimensions and pop out in hours?
Yeah,
Or are they humans from the future?
I think it could be all three. I think it could be all three. I definitely believe that there are some here permanently, and if that is the case, it's more than likely going to be under the ocean, in deep underground caverns, caves, things like that. But I also think that the universe is probably some kind of an extraterrestrial highway. I think that many different species passing through would be fascinated by this beautiful blue and green looking planet, and many of them will choose to stop by. And that's why we see so many different species, like the Flatwoods monster looks very different to say the little grey aliens with black eyes, and they look different to reptilians who look different to Nordics. There's tons of different species that are probably visiting this planet all the time, and some of them will have chose to stick around.
Yeah. And I think it is pretty close-minded of people, to say that they don't exist at all. I have
Yeah,
this interesting debate with my husband quite often. And but the other thing is that why would they all look the same? Yeah. Why would they not be different
they would be.
species?
Yeah,
Exactly.
but again, like even if they're not different vastly, they don't have three heads, loads of eyes, and they do look similar to humans. That is even more acceptable as well because in nature, with evolution especially, what works works and it will repeat itself. So the human figure works. We know that because we've been here for however many thousands of years. So biology and evolution would dictate that somewhere out there, amongst all these weird and fascinating creatures, there would be something that resembles humans because it works.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
you look at the fish in the sea. Okay, they're vastly different in the way that they look, but they've all got fins and or some propulsion way of getting through water. You know,
Yeah.
that because that's where they live and that's what evolution has dictated.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably would be looking like humans somewhere. And as well, if you look at some of these famous cases, Travis Walton, Betty and Barney Hill, they also report being on aboard a craft with human-looking beings.
Yeah. Although I do wonder whether they change themselves in a way so that they don't freak people out
Yeah,
quite as much, maybe.
I've got a fascinating story about that actually. Yeah.
Go on then. We've got to hear
So yeah,
it.
so there was a guy out in America, literally in the sticks, middle of nowhere, lived on a ranch, very old ranch by himself. Heard a disturbance during the night, so he went downstairs to go figure out what was going on. And he saw, as he got down this halfway down the stairs, he looked across the banister and saw a humanoid-looking creature stood at the fireplace. And as it turned around and heard the guy coming down, it quickly morphed into his nephew. Now, on the mantelpiece where the being was just stood, there was a picture of his nephew,
Oh,
and
wow.
it morphed into which wouldn't make sense. Like there was no reason for his nephew to be breaking in at night or rummaging around in his house. It was just this creature had seen that on the fireplace and thought, this is someone he knows. This is someone that's going to make him feel comfortable, less afraid. And it morphed within seconds into an image of his nephew. So very, very strange.
Wow. That wasn't Stardust Ranch, was it?
No, I don't think it was. No.
All right. Because there were some very similar freaky things going on there as well,
Yeah.
which I found really fascinating. So we've touched quite a lot on, I mean, I could talk about things like this forever, but let's move on to a different entity now. So I've noticed on your YouTube channel is called 401 Files. First of all, why is it called 401 Files? What's the story behind that?
Yeah. So when I was around at my brother's house and we was talking about doing videos, talking to like-minded people who have an interest in this stuff. And my brother was like, "You should start a YouTube channel. Like, you're really interested in this, you're passionate about it, get a YouTube channel started." And then obviously the conversation started to turn on, well, what should we call it? So we're looking up names, trying to find the coolest name on the internet. And an error page came up. You know the error 401?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Access denied or something like that.
Oh yeah.
That came up. My brother turned to me and he's like, "That's it. 401 access denied." And when we Googled what it means, it basically means that you don't have access to the files that you're trying to find. So it's basically um private. It's like secret files basically, is
Like
401 files.
blocked, yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. And
Oh, that's fantastic.
that's where it came from.
Yeah, because I actually started Googling 401 and loads of paranormal kind of connections came up with the number 401. So I think I
Wow.
might have to start looking into that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah. Apparently there's a one point there was a missing aeroplane 401 as well. And then I might be wrong with this, but there's I can't remember what he's called now. The guy who writes about people,
David Torlidis.
Paul Adis, yeah. Is that
Yeah.
401 as well?
No, that's 411, missing 411.
Oh, that's it, 411. I knew
Very,
it was,
very close though.
yeah,
Very close.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It just jogs it in my mind. So you've been from what I can tell here, you've been all over the place hunting for creatures and aliens and ghosts and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Do you manage to get sort of about quite often or?
Yeah, I do. Mainly my area of where I research and get out to film, explore, etc., is the North Yorkshire Moors.
All right.
Simply because that's where I live. It's the closest hotspot to me. But I've been as far as Rendlesham. I've been to different parts of the world doing this. So yeah. But Rendlesham was probably one of my most fan favorite videos because I got behind the perimeter fence at Rendlesham, and I was running through all the bunkers. I got footage that I believe nobody else has ever captured. I
Oh
got
wow,
captured.
tell us about that then. I was going to say, did you get arrested? It's
I
all
got
right, I'm
detained.
in the military.
I got detained. I didn't get arrested. I got detained. Yeah, but basically, obviously, do you know about Rendlesham?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously the famous case that happened in 1980, crewman who was stationed at Woodbridge and Bentwaters experienced some strange lights over a 2-day period. There's a lot more to it than that, but because of that story, me and my friend decided to go there and camp over the night, do a bit of filming. As guys do, we sat around, we're talking about like what we're gonna do next and what should we talk about, and then next thing it comes up in conversation that we should climb the fence. I don't, maybe not our best idea, but it seemed
Oh,
exciting. It seemed exciting, so we found a way in to breach the fence, and we was now on the opposite side of the military base where all this happened, and we're running through all these bunkers where apparently back at night in 1980 there was a UFO held and captive in one of these
oh
bunkers. So
really? Oh, I
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
know that bit.
yeah. So day two, when the lights came back, if you know the story, the second day, lights came back over the base and started
Yeah,
firing lasers through the bunker.
yeah.
The story goes that the military that was stationed there had captured one of these craft and kept it in one of these bunkers, and the one that came back the second day was trying to retrieve it, was looking for it. So
Gosh.
yeah, we was running through all those bunkers, and everything was going fine because on from the outside it looks very derelict, like
I
it's
was
not
going to
used.
say, is it still used at all?
Well, you would think not. Like you would looking at it, you would think it's not used anymore. So I felt pretty safe and confident running around, although it was exciting and you're not supposed to be doing it. I felt quite safe. And then we decided to push the bar a little further. And we was like, we need to get to the watchtower, like the comms tower of where the call would have come in on that night, because that's where they would have received the call from the front gate to say that there's some weird lights.
Yeah.
We need to get there. So we started making our way there, and there was a patch of grass. It was like a square piece of grass that ran up to the comms tower, maybe only about 50 meters in length. We took about 10 steps on this patch of grass, and then the next thing there is an unmarked vehicle and two military vehicles flying down the runway, which is just behind the comms tower. We died to the floor. We're laid there now with our faces to the floor, thinking, crap, have they seen us? Haven't they seen us? But I think it was quickly, agreed upon that we'd been seen because the way they span round and reversed was clearly obvious that they'd seen us. So we decided to climb up, run as fast as we could. We both ended up splitting up by mistake. He thought he knew the way out. I thought I knew the way out. We separated. As it was, he did know the way back out. I ran into a massive dead end, bushes everywhere, nettles and thorn bushes, and I dived into this thorn bush. And as I'm laid there, I can hear the vehicle doors of these military, 4x4s. I can hear that they're on the roofs, they're looking out for me. I even heard them say, "Get the dogs" at one point, which obviously
Oof.
wasn't yet. But all I kept thinking was, I'm going to get found because all this green vegetation I've just ran through was untouched. And now I've just put a big trail right through it all to exactly where I'm laid. I'm going to get found.
Oh no.
I tried to escape. I went to a fence that had some barbed wire at the top, but it was really old and rusty. And as I climbed up it, it started to fall back on me. So I just, at that point, I was like, no, it's over. Like, I'm giving myself up. Um, I got roughed up a little bit. They grabbed hold of me, asked me a lot of questions. Funnily enough, as well, they asked me what I knew about Rendlesham, the event, and I played dumb, to be honest. I made it out like I was there innocently, just trying to make a documentary, and I didn't know that, I just lied basically.
Yeah.
Um, and it was really weird because the military guys in uniform were quite heavy-handed and, as they're supposed to be. That's their job. I've been in the army myself. I know how it goes. But then a guy in civvies just turned up in an unmarked vehicle, and he was really to the point. He just took over everything and basically decided to let me go. But he said to the military guy who detained me, "Have you got his name? Have you got his address? Have you checked the camera?" And all these different questions. But really, he just said to him, "Let him back out to the gate where he came or where he got in, and let him go." So I was like, "This is so weird. Like they're letting me go with no punishment." When they asked to check my camera, though, I was very clever. Rather than pressing forward and going back to all my images and videos from that day, I just pressed back, so it takes you right to the very start of your footage.
Yeah.
So all they saw was me in the woods talking about wanting to make a documentary, wanting to make a film. They never actually saw me climbing into the base or, getting excited about breaking into the bunkers. They never saw any of that. So luckily for me, I think they just assumed I was telling the truth and let me go.
Yeah. That you were just an urban explorer.
Yeah, but they followed me even when they let me out of the fence line, back into the forest, they followed me in that vehicle right the way down the side of the fence. So very weird.
Wow. And so I presume they were British Army people, were they?
Yeah, they are, which is again, I mean, I know that back in the 80s the Americans were stationed there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who's stationed there now, but these were British guys.
Yeah. And please tell me that the man in civvies didn't have a black suit and black tie.
He didn't, not as far as I remember, but he was definitely somebody. He was definitely somebody that they respected and listened to because I think even the sergeant that detained me, when this guy in civvies turned up and started saying, "Have you done this? Have you checked that? Let him go." I think even he was like, "What?
What? Yeah.
Really?" But he didn't question it. He listened to him straight away and followed his command. So this guy was definitely somebody, even though he was in civvies. I'm not sure who he was.
Wow. Well, it's amazing to think that they're still so protective of it after 40 years.
Yeah, massively. I was thinking the same. But even when you go to Rendlesham, and if you walk that perimeter fence, you'll see holes that have been cut in by loads of people trying to do what we did. And they must get patched up all the time. So they must experience this quite a lot. It is a really well-renowned place for anyone that's interested in UFOs and things. But I don't think I've ever seen the footage that we got from anyone else. It's very unique. And if anyone wants to get a really detailed look at what Rendlesham looks like from inside, then that video is on my YouTube channel.
Yeah. And that's the 401 files.
Yeah,
Um, I always found it really weird. I mean, I think I've got a pet hate to people who debunk things, not
yeah,
just because they're being skeptical, which is really important, but they're just trying to pull things down for the sake of it. And it really pees me off, to be honest. And there's been so many people who've reckoned to say, oh, they just saw the lighthouse,
yeah,
shining through the trees, because people are really that stupid when they've got a huge UFO in front of them and they
yeah.
go up and touch it and it has funny writing on. But no, that's a light shining through from the lighthouse 2 miles away. I mean, it just beggars belief, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's loads to that event as well. A lot of people don't know the smaller details. For example, after the first night, even the locals, the farmers, and people that lived in that area reported that unmarked vehicles came in and chopped all the trees down in that surrounding area and carted all that wood out. So, this is just little things like that. I mean, people might say, debunkers might say that that's coincidence, but it's never happened in that area like that to that extent. So, and why would you need an unmarked trailer to come in and do that kind of work,
Yeah,
especially a night after such claims had been made? It's too coincidental for me.
yeah, and it doesn't actually make sense.
The biggest laugh is, these people that were in charge of this base, they were in charge of nuclear weapons, so they're not idiots.
Yeah,
They're the guys that will be pressing the buttons in, turning the keys when a nuclear weapon was to be launched. They're very
yeah,
smart, very professional people, not just your everyday idiot off the street.
yeah, yeah,
So when they say that they've seen what they've seen, I believe what they've seen, especially
yeah.
yeah, from the base commander. So
Am I right in thinking now? I might be convoluting this with other stories, so I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. Did the craft interfere with the nuclear um, weapons? Did they kind of switch them
yeah,
on and then
yeah,
deactivate them to show that they could? Am I right in thinking that?
yeah, and that's a common reoccurrence within the UFO field. I'm pretty sure you'll know that, but yeah,
Yeah,
that happened at Rendlesham. But there's also silos all over the world, missile silos, where that happens time and time again. These craft are able to just at ease and at will turn these missiles off, which is dangerous in itself because they have to be stable at all times. And if you shut a nuclear weapon off, it's not just a case of, oh, thank God, it's safe now. It's not. It's actually the opposite. It can be quite dangerous.
yeah.
But it happens all the time.
Fascinating. Right, I'm going to move on to Bigfoot now.
Yeah.
because I spied a video on your YouTube channel. So, how did your interest in Bigfoot start? And can you tell me about your adventures going to try and find out about it?
Yeah. So when I had my experience with this extraterrestrial creature, this being, I did the usual thing. I went to Google. I started typing in words that I knew, bipedal creature, being, and I realized that people were having similar sightings with something that stood upright, but didn't resemble what I saw. And what these people were describing here in the UK, believe it or not, sounded like a Bigfoot.
Mm,
So that was mind blowing to me because I was thinking, there's no way a creature of 7 to 8 feet tall, huge stature, can be, undiscovered here on this island. It just doesn't make sense to me. But sure enough, hundreds of people were having these experiences, and some of them were really credible as well, like professional people in professional fields that had no reason to lie. It clearly changed their viewpoint on life, and that really made me think, well, what is going on then? So yeah, I have always stuck to this belief that I think extraterrestrials, and we spoke about this at the start of this conversation, will possibly come in all different shapes and sizes, and I think that it could be extraterrestrial just because it's covered in hair, just because it resembles a Bigfoot or whatever, doesn't mean that it can't be of extraterrestrial origin. And I genuinely do believe that what people are seeing is another sophisticated, intelligent race from somewhere else. Um, Albeit it looks animalistic, it looks like it could be undiscovered, but for me, it just doesn't make sense here in the UK. It's got to be extraterrestrial.
yeah. Do you know what really amazes me? And this is kind of looping back to the film idea. And people might laugh at this, but I
The
think
Wookiee.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Chewbacca. I
yeah,
mean, for God's sake, it's Bigfoot.
yeah. I've thought about that myself as well. Exactly the same thing.
It's just mental, isn't it, when you start thinking about it?
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, have you ever been to the USA Bigfoot hunting?
I haven't. No, I would love to. I'd love to go to Canada as well, like the Pacific
Yeah.
Northwest, place like that. That'd be the dream.
I would as well.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough a couple of years ago to interview Cliff Barrettman,
Yeah.
and I just love to go to his museum, Bigfoot Museum, and go out to places like Oregon and Montana, places
Oh
like
yeah, I would. Yeah.
Northern California, and just I'd love to do it. I'd be terrified, but it's just fascinating.
Yeah. And if you think about it as well, like a lot of these, like so the UFO phenomena, Bigfoot phenomena, the paranormal, there's so many similarities. There's so many crossovers that makes me believe as well that they're all interlinked. Maybe they're not, um, oblivious to each other.
Yeah,
Because in the Bigfoot world, we hear stories of people having an experience with some weird lights maneuvering through the trees at night, and then moments later they see this big hairy creature.
yeah,
We also have the light phenomena within the UFOs, in the UFO field. We also have light phenomena in the paranormal world.
mm,
Bad smells. How many times do you investigate a poltergeist case and the victim reports a bad smell appearing out of nowhere?
yeah,
Bad smells are also common in Bigfoot and they're also common in UFO and extraterrestrial encounters. There's so many similarities and crossovers that I think they're either all interlocked or they're not oblivious to each other,
yeah.
but doing their own thing.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. I mean, I've been doing this podcast 5 years now, and I always had an interest in the paranormal. And like yourself, it was set off by something I saw when I was a child. And I think that's quite a common occurrence actually, that people see things when they're young and then they become just
Yeah.
almost obsessed with finding out. But right up until I started this podcast, I was just interested in ghosts, poltergeists, things like that. And then when I started interviewing people and they were telling me these stories with straight faces, and you could see that these people were completely passionate, and absolutely believed that this thing had happened to them.
Yeah.
They weren't lying, they weren't making it up. It's not for me to say whether it had happened or not, but it started to really boggle my mind. And as I think happens quite a lot, like you just said, that after you've learned about so many different things, you start to see the connections.
Yeah.
And I also believe that these are all connected. I don't know whether it's interdimensionally or something else, and it drives me crazy that I'll probably go to my grave and never understand it any more than I do today. But it's really fascinating, sort of
Yeah.
talking about it and thinking about it.
Absolutely, I agree totally. It's a frustration of mine as well. Is I get out there a lot, spending many of nights on my own, freezing in the woods, and I just know that I'm never going to get the answers. But I think it's the chase that I really enjoy. The not knowing that excites me. So as long as I'm excited by it, as long as I'm passionate and I get to speak to like-minded people, then I'll still be doing this for many years to
Yeah,
come.
yeah, definitely. So have you got any new plans of things that you're going to be doing that you could tell us about, places that
I've
you're going to go?
I've been working on a documentary. I've been working on a documentary for far too long, to be honest, but I want it to be right. A lot of people that watch me on my channel know me for my editing style. Like they're almost mini documentaries.
Yeah,
I've started to take my foot off the gas a little bit with that and ease up and make it a bit more, like just out there vlogging kind of videos. But yeah, this documentary's taking its time, but I want it to be right. And it's about how I got into this, and it's about my experience as a child, and then going off into the UK, especially the North Yorkshire Moors, um, and talking to people about their experiences. And there's some amazing coincidences on there. There's some amazing footage so far, but I need to get it finished and out as soon as possible.
yeah. Have you got a name for it yet?
I
Oh,
haven't. So if anyone's
no.
got any good names for a documentary like that, please do let me know.
Um, Another thing I wanted to ask you about actually was considering that you've spent lots and lots of time outside in desolate places, have you had any encounters with any large cats or anything like that?
I haven't, never. I've never even so much seen a print, which I'm quite devastated about. But I do look whenever I'm out. I always look in like the edge of puddles, riverbeds, things like that for marks or trails. And whenever I find a dead carcass out, I always try and examine it as best I can. But I've never seen anything that suggests it was a big cat. But I do believe they're here. I do believe that people
Yeah.
are seeing them.
Well, I know some of them have been caught, especially up in Scotland.
Yeah,
Some of the smaller cats,
yeah.
lynxes and things. I think a cheetah maybe once, but we're all sort of really wanting to see this elusive black puma that everybody's sort of
Yeah,
saying. Because I go on holiday in Cornwall quite a lot, and the sightings are rife down there. I mean, there are books
yeah. I think
about it.
there was one recently as well from Cornwall. I've seen on my Google News page. There was one recently. Someone had seen something.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I'll have to look that up.
yeah.
Wow.
Fascinating. They're going to release links as well back into Scotland, which I think is a really good thing. Hopefully
Yeah.
one day wolf as well, but yeah,
Yeah. Now that would be a sight, wouldn't
it would be amazing.
it? So have you got any other things that you could tell us about? Are there any experiences that we haven't touched on that you'd like to tell us about, do you think?
Yeah, I can tell you a few more from the house that I grew up in if
Yeah,
you
that'd
want.
be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this story comes from my dad. My dad was a long distance lorry driver, drove up and down the UK, worked very, very long hours. Often when he'd get back, everybody in the house would be asleep because he'd be back in the early hours. So when I'd get up for school the next morning, I would never really see my dad because he'd already have climbed into bed and I'd be getting up. And this one morning I get up, my dad sat in the kitchen and that was unusual. He looked white as a sheet, completely just out of character for my dad. So I go in there and I start speaking to him, and he tells me this terrifying story of what happened the night before. I'm a bit older at this point. I'm in like year 11 at school. I've already experienced things in the house myself. I'm not stupid to what's going on.
Yeah.
And he tells me that he got home and because he'd been on the road working long hours, he could never just jump into bed, and switch off. He always had to unwind first. So he'd always make a coffee. And he walked into the kitchen, he put the kettle on, and he bent down into the fridge to get the milk out, and he heard a female voice over his right ear say, Gary, which is my dad's name, Gary. And he said, all the hairs on the back of my neck instantly stood on end. He said, it was so realistic and it was so close to my ear that I almost answered it, thinking that it was your mum who'd got up through the night. When he turned around, there was nobody there. Everyone was fast asleep, still in bed.
Oh,
Um, my Dad's mum had passed maybe about 2 months before. So my initial go-to was, "Do you think it was your mum?" He said, "Absolutely not. It wasn't my mum. It was a female's voice, but I'd never heard it before. I don't know who that belonged to." So this thing had started to speak at this point, and the weirdest thing about that is it's watching people in the house. A lot of times people talk about ghosts as being um, a recorded moment in time that's just replaying. Well, this kind of debunked that because this knew my dad's name. It was watching him in the house. Very, very scary. But
Wow.
another one as well, and I think this is probably one of my most scariest from my dad that he told me. So, mum and dad had just gone through a divorce. Mum had moved out, I'd moved out. The only person left in that house now at this point is my dad. And he just had new carpets fitted around the house. And he was telling me that he'd gone to bed one night, he'd locked up everywhere, the windows were shut, the doors were locked. He climbed into bed. It was like the first week he'd been in the house on his own. And he heard the bedroom door push against the newly laid carpet. So someone had pushed the door open to the bedroom. You know that distinctive sound where newly laid
Yeah.
carpet? Yeah. He hears that. His eyes instantly bolt open wide, and then he hears pressure being applied to the carpet that comes down the side of the bed and stops at the foot. I said to my dad, I said, "Oh my God, Dad, like what the hell did you do?" He said, "I literally stayed very, very still and I stared at the window until the sun came up the next morning." He said, "I did not move a muscle." He said, "When I woke up, I half was hoping to have turned around and seen the bedroom door was shut and then it would all be my imagination, but the bedroom door was wide open. Something definitely came in that bedroom."
Oh my goodness. I don't know
Uh,
what I do. I just don't know
Oh
what
my
I
God.
do.
When he told me that story, I was just like, "Oh my God, Dad. Like, that must have been absolutely terrifying."
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know, because there's part of you that wants to hide, but then there's that other part, like when you're watching a horror film, you're like, you've got to know what's going on. It's
I
almost
said that to
worse
him.
not to
Yeah.
know.
I said that to him, and he just said, he said he was that scared that for no love or money would he have looked above the cover to see for fear of what he would have seen. But again, the things that baffle me is something came into that room, physically put pressure on the carpet, so it was making contact with the ground and the door to have opened it, but
Yeah.
it's not there. What the hell is happening? Like, what is that can do that? It's not physical, but it's physical. It
Yeah.
makes no sense, the questions like that blow my mind, and that they're the questions that really keep me intrigued.
Yeah, yeah, and I know exactly what you mean because it's like people get touched by
Yeah,
spirits. People
yeah,
get hit, they get scratched, and like you say, they're there physically, but they're not there. I mean, I've spoke to people who have seen full-bodied apparitions, and they said they looked just like a human, and they touched them, and it just felt like somebody, and then
yeah,
in front of their eyes, they faded away, and then they're
yeah.
not there anymore. So I think there's a lot more to physics than we already know.
Oh,
There's,
massive. Yeah,
I mean, when I've spoken, and people might call people mad or mentally unstable or whatever, but I've spoken to people who claim to have been taken up into alien spacecraft. And
yeah,
okay, you know, I don't know whether that really happens, because I haven't seen it for myself, so I can't really comment. But what they said was that they were lifted up through the ceilings of the house and then through the roof.
yeah.
So there must be the ability somewhere to almost like separate particles and put them back together, which then brings us back to Star Trek, because that's what they were doing there. They could kind of what's it called now? I've forgotten what it's called. Where they
I know what
put
you mean. Like
yeah,
defragment everything, and then
yeah,
yeah,
and then put it back together in the right order.
yeah.
Um, so
It,
that must be
I hear,
possible.
yeah, I hear that a lot. People like young children, especially going through the wall into a craft, things like that. But I also think that they can manipulate time so that time for you and them is moving different to everyone else outside of the experience. And I often think back to my experience of seeing this creature in the woods, and it felt like I was only stood there for a few seconds. We made eye contact, and then it carried on walking. But something doesn't feel right for me there. Like, why did I forget about that event for all those years. Why
Yeah.
did it not seem panicked or, amazed that it had been discovered? It was just something doesn't sit right with me, and I often think, I wonder if time was manipulated in some way for the kids back on the bus, as opposed to me stood up on the embankment looking at this thing. I
Yeah.
don't know, but they've definitely mastered ways of manipulating space and time.
Yeah. It's almost like it could see to the future that you weren't going to say anything about it. And
Yeah,
so it knew that it was okay as well.
yeah,
I was speaking to someone the other day, I think it was Marco I interviewed last week, and he was saying that there's this theory which just boggles my mind even more, if it's possible, that everything that we see, feel, touch, smell is a construct of our own minds.
yeah.
So in a way, it doesn't really exist. But I said, but how can we all be seeing the same thing? If that, I don't, it's, do you know what? I gave up physics and chemistry when I was age 13 and I chose my options at school. And now it really
Yeah.
annoys me because when I try and read stuff that's, physics, oh, what's it called now? On the Big Bang Theory, I can't remember what it's called. Something physics. Um, and
Quantum
it,
physics.
yeah, no, theoretical physics, that's it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I start reading about it and I'm like, damn, I can't understand this. It really
yeah.
annoys me.
Yeah, I think about that, like the simulation theory and the double slit experiment and all these weird things that just baffle the mind. I always think about those things, and it's right. It is right. Like, how do we know? Like, how can we prove that we're not just a brain somewhere in a jar on a shelf thinking all this up on some other planet?
Yeah,
We can't disprove that. We could be, because when you go to sleep at night, your body is stationary. You aren't moving anywhere. You're fast asleep. You stay still for 12, 7, 8 hours. But your brain can be anywhere and everywhere, thinking a whole new world, a whole new life up
yeah,
from nothing. So how do we know that we're not doing that here, right now? How do we know we're not
yeah.
asleep in a bed somewhere, and when we go to sleep, we're imagining all this up, and we constantly just live this dream, that continually loop. It's weird. It can blow my mind when I start thinking about this
I
stuff.
know. And then you
And
start thinking, oh God, all that time I've wasted doing stuff that I didn't really need to do, like tidying up and washing and all that sort of stuff. When I
it's
could have just
crazy.
been out there doing crazy things.
It's crazy, like computer games as well. Like, when you're playing a computer game, so say you're playing Grand Theft Auto, right? And you're walking down the street, there's cars passing you, there's people on the sidewalk, you're walking past these big buildings. It's only real while you're facing it. Everything behind you in that game isn't happening still.
Yeah,
It's not. But then as soon as you turn around, it's so quick and fluid with the graphics and the speed that it looks like it was going on behind you. But that's not how computer games work. So
yeah,
what if that's life? Like, what if it programs, or the speed of the, I don't know, the system that we're in is so quick that everything looks like it's there all the time, but behind me right now is nothing, only to you
yeah,
because you're seeing it. So it's only there for the observer, is what I'm saying.
yeah,
You might get someone say, well, you turn around, and then I'll tell you that I can see it, and I could say, well, yeah, but you're only seeing it because you're looking at it.
yeah,
But for me, it's not there. Do you know what I mean? And I know that sounds
yeah.
weird, but think about that. Like, that's just a crazy thought.
It is, isn't it? But it's like that idea of if a tree falls in a desolate forest and no
Yeah,
one's there to hear it, does it actually make a noise?
yeah.
It's
Yep.
it
Because your question earlier was, if it is like that, how can we all be seeing the same thing? Well, if the programmer put all of us into the same world, but only allows us to see the reality when we're looking at it, then we would all see the same. Does that make sense?
yeah,
We would be all seeing the same thing. Like, if me and you stare at the same picture, we're going to see the same picture. But if I turn away from the picture and you're looking at it, it's only real to you. It's not real to me anymore. And for all
yeah,
I know, it might not be there. Like, in my world, in my world,
yeah.
it's mental. It
It
really is
is.
true.
It
Yeah.
reminds me of when kids are really little and they kind of do really weird things like they'll go and hide if they're playing hide and seek, but they won't hide properly and they'll just put their hands over their eyes and
Yeah.
then they think that you can't see them. Like,
Yeah,
you can't see me now because I can't see you. And it's
yeah,
that kind of idea that I tell you what, once when I was coming home from work, and I don't really subscribe to this Matrix idea, although it is very interesting. I was driving home from work one day, and just before I pulled into my drive, I looked up at the sky and I swear to God, it glitched. Right. I don't, it might have been my brain having a bit of a funny turn, but it kind of pixelated. It was like it
yeah.
went, "Ah!" And
Oh
then
my
and
God.
I looked at it and I went, no, no, because it was less than a second. So was it my brain or was there, did I catch it out? Was something happening?
That's weird, isn't it, when you think
Yeah.
like why that happened? It's like the speed of the universe as well. Like that might be the speed of the system. And that's why nobody can go faster than the speed of light, because if you do, you break out of the program.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
So the cap on the program, in order for us to not discover what's really happening, is the speed of light, which we know is the constant of the universe. So we can't ever break it, because if we do, we pop out of the program and we get to see the real world. Who knows?
Yeah. Have you seen The Truman Show, the
I have.
film?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, maybe it's real.
Yeah, definitely. I sometimes think it is, to be honest. I do.
Yeah. Well, that's the film directors knowing the secrets again, isn't it? Making a
Exactly. Yeah.
film. They were
Yeah.
just all making films about it and laughing at us all.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Ben, I've taken so much of your time up, but it's been really interesting and really fun, actually.
Well,
I could,
I hope I haven't come across as the crazy, tinfoil hat wearing lunatic that people probably think I am when they
no,
read my videos saying UK Bigfoot. Yeah, I can imagine what people think, but hopefully I've give a good account of myself.
I think you have. I don't think you're any crazier than the rest of us.
Yeah, brilliant.
No, it's been fantastic, and I hope that once you've made your documentary, you'll come back on and tell us all about it.
Absolutely, I will. I promise.
Okay, that's brilliant. Well, thank you. Can you tell us all where we can find you on social media and other things, please?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube at 401 Files. You can find me on Instagram at that same name. Also on Facebook as well. If anyone's
Okay.
got any stories or encounters that they want to share with me, you can also send them to 401files@gmail.com.
Okay, that's brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Ben, and I hope we'll hear from you in the very near future. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
All right, cheers.
Bye.
Bye.